At exactly 3:41 p.m. on February 7, 2026, Meghan Markle, draped in a custom ivory cape coat and oversized sunglasses, made her way toward the iconic Chanel flagship on North Rodeo Drive, with the composure of someone accustomed to doors opening quietly in her presence. What she expected was discretion, deference, a seamless escort into a private suite. The ritual of luxury as it's meant to unfold. Instead, she stepped into a spectacle that would ripple across the fashion world. 2 security guards stood firmly in place, statuesque and yielding. Their silence formed a barrier of quiet resistance between her and those unmistakable double C doors. No manager emerged. No courteous clarification followed. Then, one guard, in a clipped tone, sliced through the tension. We've been instructed not to accommodate you. For a woman once hailed as fashion's next humanitarian muse, the moment felt staggering, almost unreal. But make no mistake, this was no misunderstanding, no clerical slip. Certainly not an oversight. It was the final act of a calculated global decision, concluded weeks earlier at Chanel's Rue Cambon headquarters in Paris. Within the inner corridors of high fashion, insiders described the move as the nuclear option, rarely invoked, but utterly irreversible. Chanel's action was precise, deliberate. Meghan Markle had been blacklisted worldwide. Every boutique, every showroom, every gala, every brand event closed. It was erasure, the kind that reverberates through boardrooms and hushed industry conversations alike. Witnesses say Meghan paused mid-text, her hands suspended above her phone, the silence stretching uncomfortably long. Not a single word left her mouth. Then came the unraveling. From Dior's entrance across the street, a staff member watched as Meghan placed one urgent call to Prince Harry. She paced back and forth like a wound-up toy, muttering under her breath, "They'll be fired. I swear they'll be fired." No one humiliates me like this. Her voice was tight, low, charged with anger. Within 20 minutes, Harry arrived, hood drawn low, face pale, jaw clenched with restrained frustration. A brief exchange with the head of security followed. One nod, one firm shake of the head. No exceptions, no compromise. Harry didn't argue. Turning to Meghan, his voice carried a flat but weighted tone. "Let's go. Please." She didn't move right away. 12 minutes passed, long enough for 3 separate viral clips to surface online, including one where Meghan pointed toward the boutique, mouthing the words, "You don't know who I am." Chanel declined to respond to media inquiries, and they rarely do, because sometimes silence is the message. As one industry veteran put it bluntly, when Chanel goes quiet, that's the statement. Loud, unmistakable, fine. Confidential internal documents reviewed by our newsroom reveal that the rare blacklisting protocol, internally labeled retraite definitive, meaning final withdrawal, is reserved for only the most severe circumstances. It applies to individuals who violate brand ethics, breach intellectual trust, or repeatedly ignite public controversy. Meghan, that is sources say, checked every category. Confirmation from insiders reveals that the formal motion for definitive blacklisting was signed in December 2025 by Bruno Pavlovsky, Chanel's president of fashion, alongside Francois M., former chairwoman of the supervisory board and senior advisor to the Wertheimer family. Behind closed doors, Chanel's brand integrity unit compiled a detailed dossier. Leaked emails allegedly showed Meghan requesting co-creative credit for a limited edition handbag capsule in 2023. Additional testimonies from 4 former staff members described her as manipulative, condescending, and intensely controlling over her public narrative. But the fracture that exploded into February 2026's public confrontation had begun 14 months earlier. On December 5, 2024, Meghan reportedly visited a private Chanel atelier in Paris, unofficially, through an invitation from an American stylist friend. According to internal accounts, she introduced herself as a creative partner connected to the RQL initiative and insisted on reviewing sketches from the Me 2025 collection. She wasn't merely offering input, she was delivering directives. Staff say she requested trims be renamed according to her suggestions, proposed eliminating what she described as a French stiffness, and even implied she sought a level of creative authority comparable to what Karl Lagerfeld once commanded. One archivist said the atmosphere shifted instantly. A Chanel historian recalled, "She misunderstood everything. Chanel is not an incubator for personal promotion. It's a house, a temple. and temples do not worship outsiders. Within days, her name quietly disappeared from the Métier's Dart Show guest list in Manchester. The blacklist had begun, and its impact reached far beyond Beverly Hills. Dior, Balmain, and Bottega Veneta reportedly received internal memos classifying Meghan as a Tier 3 brand risk, an extraordinarily rare designation that raises eyebrows across Europe's fashion elite. A senior LVMH PR strategist, speaking anonymously, summarized it this way: Meghan is disruptive, not the kind that inspires creativity, the kind that invites litigation. The public fallout of February 2026 was merely the visible surface of a much deeper divide, one that quietly began in the spring of 2023. Inside fashion circles, the early tension had a name: the Mood Board War, a standoff surrounding the proposed Owl x Chanel capsule that never materialized. What started as exploratory collaboration gradually evolved into an institutional clash, a fiercely protected fashion institution versus a determined outsider intent on reshaping its DNA through her own narrative. So by May 2023, Meghan and her business advisor, Vanessa Lauren, reached out to Chanel's U.S. press office through a third-party intermediary, Sarah Carmichael, a former Goop publicist. Their proposal: a limited edition humanitarian collection blending Coco Chanel's heritage with Meghan's contemporary female empowerment brand. Bold, ambitious, unmistakably controversial. Chanel, ever deliberate and methodical, remained unconvinced. And in that hesitation, the seeds of future conflict were firmly planted. From that point forward, what once appeared to be potential collaboration deteriorated into a prolonged chess match. Every move calculated, every public remark and Instagram caption dissected for reputational risk. High-level insiders later described it as a slow-burning reputational siege, during which Chanel and allied European fashion houses quietly synchronized efforts to safeguard their creative sovereignty. Meghan's cultivated image as a humanitarian-style icon clashed sharply with the precise, almost ceremonial world of haute couture. The outcome, in hindsight, felt inevitable. What began as dialogue in early 2023 spiraled into international controversy by February 2026. A reminder that in high fashion, influence is delicate, reputation is currency, and a single miscalculation, or perceived overreach, can eclipse even the brightest star. From conversation to confrontation, Meghan Markle's attempt to fuse humanitarian branding with haute couture tradition set off a chain reaction that unsettled not only Chanel, but the broader fashion elite. The original pitch, the proposed limited edition line uniting Coco Chanel's legacy with Meghan's empowerment narrative, now stands as a symbol of what might have been, and what ultimately ignited one of the most visible fashion standoffs in recent memory. On June 14th, 23, a meeting in New York City, one that would later gain near-mythical status in fashion circles, was scheduled between Chanel's U.S. head of brand relations and Meghan's team. What appeared routine quickly evolved into a display of striking ambition. Internal notes leaked from a PR server described the approach as forceful, presumptuous, and startlingly dismissive of Chanel's carefully structured brand hierarchy. Undeterred, Meghan arrived prepared. Multiple attendees recall her unveiling a sleek presentation titled, "Reimagine Chanel, From Exclusivity to Empathy." Insiders claim her proposal suggested replacing the iconic interlocking double C logo with a subtle owl floral motif for a silk accessory capsule. But that was only the beginning. She envisioned campaigns featuring real women rather than traditional runway models, with herself positioned prominently as both the face and voice of the collection. An eco-conscious handbag line was also proposed, named after royal women, including a particularly bold Diana piece. When Chanel executives inquired whether she possessed formal authorization to reference Princess Diana's name, Meghan reportedly responded with a shrug. "I carry her legacy. I don't need a license to honor it." Days later, a mood board allegedly crafted by her creative team surfaced online. Archival photographs of Princess Diana in Chanel suits were layered alongside black and white images of Meghan styled similarly. One slide bore the title, "From Grief to Glamour, the Heirloom Line." According to a source within Chanel's paralegal division, the leak immediately activated an internal ethics alert. The concern wasn't purely aesthetic. It was the implication that Chanel's heritage could be leveraged to reframe another's legacy, a move insiders viewed as crossing from inspiration into appropriation. On June 26, 2023, Chanel's leadership convened an emergency session. By July 1, all communication with Meghan's Archewell team was terminated. A formal no engagement directive was issued across regional divisions. The project was quietly shut down, though not without residue. Emails obtained through anonymous leaks suggest Meghan did not respond to the rejection lightly. One message allegedly read, "They used me for press, then closed the door. But I'll outgrow them. I always do." By late 2024, Chanel references began disappearing from Meghan's interviews and appearances. The name-dropping ceased. The subtle nods vanished. Chanel-inspired styling gave way to Valentino, Carolina Herrera, and self-portrait, labels perceived as more receptive to celebrity-driven collaboration. A former stylist involved briefly in Meghan's Netflix wardrobe described the shift as deeper than optics, as she was determined to prove she didn't need Chanel. But every time she wore a French label, she'd second-guess herself. Does this feel Parisian enough to prove my point? What unfolded became a silent tug-of-war between personal brand ambition and institutional legacy, an invisible contest that insiders say shaped her public persona throughout that period. Fashion analysts argue that the tension between Meghan and Chanel reflects a broader cultural divide. Heritage institutions versus celebrity brand architects. Houses such as Chanel, Hermes, and Rolex operate through discretion, legacy, and rigid control. Meghan's team, by contrast, thrives on rapid cycles, viral visibility, cause-driven narratives, and modern branding acceleration. As one French fashion executive put it bluntly, and Meghan didn't understand, Chanel does not evolve through her. In Paris, that distinction matters more than she could ever imagine. And so, February 7th, 2026, referred to internally as the 12 minutes of silence, became the inevitable crescendo of a conflict years in the making. That warm Los Angeles afternoon, when North Rodeo Drive typically hums with polished luxury and restrained elegance, the rhythm was abruptly interrupted. Meghan, accompanied by her assistant Greta Yu and stylist in training Eliza Morrow, stepped out of a black Cadillac Escalade and made her way toward Chanel's Beverly Hills flagship. She anticipated familiarity. What greeted her instead felt entirely unfamiliar. A corporate lockdown unfolding in plain sight, a barrier of discipline and silent authority. What followed was 12 extraordinary minutes of silence, captured on phones by bystanders, murmured about by insiders, and now detailed in full. Timestamp store security logs show Meghan arriving precisely at 15:41:12. Two seasoned Chanel security staff members, Miguel R. and Sophie L., advanced in synchronized motion, positioned at the entrance. Sophie delivered a prepared statement. I'm sorry, madame. We've been instructed not to facilitate access. There was no raised voice, no spectacle. Meghan blinked once before responding evenly. I have a standing arrangement with your global director. Check again. Miguel's face remained neutral. There are no active arrangements in our system, he replied. This applies across regions. Across regions. The wording was intentional, signaling that this was no local misunderstanding, but a coordinated global order. For the first 60 seconds, Meghan maintained composure. But at 15:43:09, she retrieved her phone and began pacing just beyond the velvet rope. Reports indicate she was on a live call with Prince Harry at their Montecito residence. Eyewitnesses recall phrases such as, "They'll regret this. Get Bruno on the phone." The tone was audible, deliberate, almost theatrical. A message, perhaps, that she would not be dismissed quietly. Inside the boutique, staff monitored events through internal security feeds. One anonymous employee described the atmosphere as tense, but meticulously prepared. We were instructed clearly last week. If she arrives, do not engage. Do not escalate. Do not take photos. Just told the line. The directive reportedly came from Chanel America's division vice president in an internal memo dated February 1, 2026. Meghan had been classified as a Tier 1 non-engaged individual per Paris. No ambiguity. Persona non grata, globally enforced. By 15:47, Meghan shifted approach. Witnesses say she began narrating into her phone, alternating between measured calm and performative indignation, gesturing toward the entrance. This is how they treat women who speak up. They want silence, not creativity. According to insiders, the footage was promptly forwarded to her PR strategist, Andrea Fielding, under the subject line, "Use this if we go nuclear." Then came what some describe as the most striking moment. Stylist Eliza Morrow, speaking anonymously, claims Meghan publicly referenced a Chanel regional director by name, accusing him of corporate intimidation and ethical cowardice within earshot of passers-by. She wanted witnesses. She wanted visibility. Chanel did not respond. And at 15:53:21, Prince Harry arrived. Baseball cap pulled low, unshaven, jacket partially zipped. Observers described him as stepping into turbulence. Weary, yet determined. He approached Meghan, gently touched her elbow, and spoke 5 quiet words. "We need to go now." She resisted briefly. Then she conceded. They departed without further incident. The boutique doors never opened. By 21:12 that evening, an internal Chanel Slack message circulated among senior client managers worldwide. If asked, refer to standard client protocols. Do not comment externally. Our position remains unchanged. Behind the scenes, other luxury houses observed closely. By the following morning, Dyer and Balenciaga discreetly instructed their boutiques to reconfirm internal access tiers, effectively reviewing whether Meghan retained entry privileges. Where she did, they were quietly revoked. But what made those 12 minutes resonate was not conflict, but silence. No statement, no apology, no explanation. In haute couture, where diplomacy is stitched into every seam, this was more than a public incident. It was a public excommunication. The doors did not slam. They simply remained closed, with resolve, the quiet authority of legacy, the weight of centuries-old discretion. Across Parisian couture, corridors shimmer with tradition and secrecy. But when those corridors turn away, the quiet can be deafening. Meghan Markle would feel that silence long after February 7th. In the weeks following her very public rejection at Chanel's Beverly Hills flagship, a carefully coordinated distancing rippled through France's most powerful fashion institutions. From the historic salons along Rue du Faubourg Saint-Honoré to the marble offices overlooking Place Vendôme, consensus was swift and unmistakable. Meghan Markle was no longer welcome in Paris. Once a name that opened doors, now a liability. As one insider put it, when your name disappears from call sheets in the city, the signal is permanent. Confidential intelligence from a senior fashion source reveals that on February 9th, 2026, a private roundtable convened under the aegis of Colbert, the elite association representing France's most prestigious luxury houses. Attendees reportedly included representatives from LVMH, parent company of Dior, Louis Vuitton, and Givenchy, alongside Kering Group executives overseeing Balenciaga and Saint Laurent. Bottega Veneta, Chanel, still privately held by the Wertheimer family, Hermes, and advisory members from Celine were also said to be present. No official minutes were released, but a leaked summary was blunt. Until further notice, Meghan Markle is to be removed from all guest lists, showroom access logs, press kit distributions, and influencer collaborations. The language was clinical, calculated, final. Chanel may have acted first, and most publicly, but others quickly fortified the boundary. Dior, once rumored to have considered Meghan for a brand ambassadorship, quietly directed teams to halt garment loans and cease communication with her talent representatives. Givenchy, the house where Meghan wore her now iconic 2018 wedding gown under the late Claire Waite-Keller, declined to comment publicly. However, a source close to the current creative leadership stated plainly, "Our focus is on emerging voices, not recurring controversies." Balmain was more direct. A planned digital campaign featuring a conversation between creative director Olivier Rousteing and Meghan was reportedly canceled just days before filming. As one executive admitted, every discussion ends up being about her, not the garments. Even Jake Emus, a brand known for embracing modern celebrity culture, is said to have issued a firm refusal. Behind every coveted front row seat at Fashion Week exists an intricate web of publicists, stylists, and brand gatekeepers who decide who gets dressed, positioned, and photographed. Meghan's name, once considered a strategic asset, had quietly become a flagged inquiry. A leading European stylist who collaborated with Meghan on her 2019 British Vogue issue shared anonymously, "The second her name comes up with a brand, there's a pause. Then a pivot." That's code 4. It means don't ask again. Paris Fashion Week, scheduled from March 4th to 11th, 2026, released its provisional guest list. Meghan's name was nowhere to be found. No front row placements, no backstage credentials. no scheduled media appearances, complete invisibility. Once able to sit beside Anna Wintour without question, she was now conspicuously absent. The descent felt swift and definitive. Yet behind closed doors, her team remained active. Since February 8th, her PR firm, SNE Strategies, reportedly pitched at least 5 separate image rehabilitation initiatives to major fashion and lifestyle publications. Among them, a reconciliation-focused feature with Harper's Bazaar, a digital cover for InStyle centered on sustainable luxury, a podcast appearance on Creative Conversations with Stella McCartney, a healing-themed editorial shoot for Marie Claire UK, a proposed TED Talk concept titled Reclaiming Creative Space as a Woman of Color. According to an editor at a prominent French publication, every proposal was either ignored or quietly declined. The reason, insiders suggest, was simple: volatility outweighs value. When Meghan enters the conversation, one source explained, a luxury becomes liability. While American media outlets tread carefully around her narrative, French fashion journalism has grown increasingly blunt. Le Figaro ran a headline translating roughly to Chanel's silence, more powerful than words. Gala published a feature titled, From Grace to Aftershock, The Fall of a Duchess in Fashion. Even Vanity Fair France, once sympathetic, printed, Madame Markle confuses disruption with dominance. Couture does not bend to ego. Fashion is not merely visibility, it is access. And with that access, even the most recognizable figures can experience cultural isolation. As one industry veteran summarized, doors open without noise, but when they close, they echo. For Meghan Markle, once seen as a global fashion disruptor, now recast as a cautionary figure, those echoes were unmistakable. When Chanel's velvet doors remained shut and Paris followed, she did not withdraw quietly. Insiders report an immediate pivot toward legal consultation, internal PR memoranda, and subtle pressure strategies aimed at regaining leverage and relevance. This time, however, the strategy faltered. On February 8th, 2026, just one day after the Beverly Hills incident, Meghan's longtime entertainment attorney, Jonathan Y., organized a high-level conference call with partners from Levin and O'Donnell LLP, a prominent New York litigation firm. The goal: explore potential grounds for a defamation or discrimination case against Chanel, citing reputational harm and financial loss. A leaked draft reviewed by our newsroom reveals that her team examined several possible claims: tortious interference with commercial relationships, discriminatory exclusion under California's Unrest Civil Rights Act, intentional infliction of emotional distress, unfair business practices under international commercial frameworks internally. The initiative was referred to as Project Salvage. Yet multiple legal authorities, including a former California Superior Court judge, reportedly characterized the strategy as emotionally motivated rather than legally substantiated. There is no legal precedent compelling a private fashion house to sustain a relationship, one analyst remarked bluntly. This isn't discrimination, it's discretion. By February 10th, the litigation approach was quietly abandoned. Frustrated by legal barriers, Meghan reverted to a more familiar tactic: curated disclosures. At 11:17 a.m. Pacific Time on February 9th, an email from Archwheel Communications Director Nadia Campbell was distributed to more than 40 media contacts across fashion, lifestyle, and progressive outlets. Subject line: an ongoing pattern. Women of color in luxury spaces. The message framed a narrative of systemic exclusion and unconscious bias, referencing Meghan's experiences with British tabloid scrutiny, her royal transition, and recent corporate tensions. Chanel was not named directly, but the implication was unmistakable. Recipients reportedly included The Cut, Teen Vogue, Refinery 29, Lux, and Birdie. Only one outlet published a sympathetic opinion piece. The rest declined. Inside Archwheel, the mood reportedly shifted toward urgency. Staff member who resigned on February 10th described the atmosphere as a panic spiral. Meghan wanted momentum, the source said, but the narrative was slipping. Leaked WhatsApp exchanges allegedly show Meghan urging her team to intensify the humanitarian framing, even invoking Princess Diana's legacy if necessary. One message reportedly read, "Remind them who I am. Remind them what I've survived." But from London to Los Angeles, the response was no longer aligned. Analysts began observing a tonal shift. The strategy was backfiring. Instead of empathy, the leaks were perceived as deflection. A European brand consultant offered a sharper assessment. This isn't about fashion anymore, it's about control. The public senses it, and so do we. We're advising clients in New York and Paris not to engage with campaigns tied to her. She doesn't move product. She moves headlines. Perhaps the most consequential blow came not from Meghan's camp, but from within the industry itself. On the evening of February 10th, a private email written by Bruno Pavlovsky, president of Chanel's fashion division, surfaced anonymously. On the restricted industry, dated January 28th, 2026, it began with the words, "There are moments when silence safeguards the house more effectively than any statement. This is one of them. We cannot be expected to absorb chaos for the sake of celebrity. The decision regarding them was strategic, not emotional." Her team will come to understand that. The email, never meant for public view, spread rapidly through Parisian and international fashion circles. For many insiders, it solidified what had long been whispered behind velvet ropes and gilded doors. This wasn't simply Meghan Markle losing favor. It was an entire industry closing ranks, a near impenetrable barrier of heritage, discretion, and institutional authority. Within a single week, Meghan shifted from issuing legal threats to witnessing her credibility quietly erode across the same platforms and social networks she once navigated with ease. Nicole's media inbox flooded, but not with support. Podcast invitations evaporated. Stylists withdrew from tentative collaborations. Fashion PR firms began adding her name to internal edgy not book lists coded as Tier 1. High risk. She had attempted to leverage controversy into power. But as one senior executive remarked bluntly, she forgot the cardinal rule of fashion. If you push your way in, you're already dressed for the exit. 1 week after the Beverly Hills standoff, Meghan was no longer fighting merely for access. She was battling for relevance within a system that measures influence in decades, not digital impressions. Chanel's global blacklist set the precedent. Legal threats stalled. Partnerships dissolved. The unified silence of luxury's most powerful houses sealed around her. For the first time at this scale, she faced institutional isolation, a language of omission and quiet authority that no PR strategy could penetrate. The consequences extended well beyond Rodeo Drive and Paris runways. Insiders at Netflix and Spotify confirmed that the ripple effects were immediate. Meghan's production company, RQL Productions, had reportedly been in early talks to revive a documentary concept centered on reimagining royal legacy through fashion. One executive described the project bluntly, dead in the water. The reason, perception. Though no major brand wants alignment with influence perceived as chaotic or performative, a Netflix producer explained, this wasn't just a Chanel issue. It forced a reassessment of her entire public capital. Spotify quietly paused involvement indefinitely. Across multiple sectors, sources indicate Meghan has begun exploring relocation possibilities outside the United States. Canada, Australia, Switzerland, publicly framed as educational exploration, wellness priorities, or lifestyle recalibration. Those close to the situation suggest deeper motivations. A Montecito neighbor, speaking off record, described the atmosphere as increasingly insular. She's lost the orbit. Visitors don't come the way they used to. Calls aren't returned. Stylists disengage. Invitations thin out. It feels collective. Public sentiment appears to reflect private distance. A Toronto-based PR firm shared internal polling indicating favorability among women aged 25-45 dropped 43% within a single month. The gap is widening, one analyst observed. She speaks empowerment, but the public perceives entitlement. Ironically, while Fashion's gates closed, one royal channel appears faintly ajar, but only for Harry. Sources within extended Windsor circles suggest Prince Harry has discreetly explored limited institutional re-engagement through charity events or legacy initiatives, not as a senior working royal, but in a symbolic capacity. The condition, reportedly conveyed through Princess Anne and Lady Louise Windsor, was unequivocal. Meghan would not be included. There is no pathway for both. A royal aide stated firmly. Friends say the Chanel episode unsettled Harry deeply. A stark confrontation with what happens when public grace evaporates. At the core of this saga lies a harsher reality. Meghan Markle's personal brand currently lacks institutional buyers. Not in Paris. Not in Hollywood. not even within the curated ecosystem of influencer partnerships where she once commanded influence. The consequences are tangible. The RQL Foundation faces donor fatigue, with two major contributors withdrawing funding since late January. Her lifestyle venture remains stalled in production. Limbo, unsold inventory from the discontinued jam line, reportedly occupying storage units in Santa Barbara. 9 consecutive fashion collaboration refusals have forced a suspension of outreach effort. For now, she remains in California, surrounded by a narrowing team and fewer visible allies. High-profile media supporters such as Gayle King and Oprah Winfrey have remained publicly silent. Former collaborators, including Serena Williams and Tyler Perry, have offered no visible defense. Speculation about her next move varies. Some foresee a pivot toward memoir or political advocacy. Others predict gradual retreat. Not by design, but by attrition. Luxury insiders insist the message has already been carved in stone. At this level, there are no second chances. Once a name is removed, no email, no apology, no headline reopens the door. On February 10th, a single image circulated quietly among fashion editors and senior stylists. The Chanel boutique on Rue Cambon stood immaculate beneath the Paris sun, its facade serene, its doors closed. Behind the glass, a discreet placard read, "By invitation only." It was more than signage, it was symbolism. In that silence, Meghan Markle's chapter in high fashion appeared to close, quietly, conclusively. For the Duchess of Sussex, the moment reflects a broader truth. Influence diminishes when confronted by collective institutional judgment. Celebrities may command headlines, but legacy brands govern access, exposure, and the subtle currents of power that outlast any viral moment. Her struggle is no longer about individual refusals. It is about confronting the immovable architecture of an establishment built on heritage and restraint. The doors remain closed, not with spectacle, not with fury, but with calm resolve. Each unanswered call, each declined pitch, each unextended invitation. The message repeats itself. Visibility has limits. Notoriety carries an expiration date. In industries ruled by loyalty, discretion, and generational memory, even global recognition cannot guarantee permanence. The networks that once amplified her now filter her out. Social capital, too, has boundaries, and she appears to have reached them. And yet, the story remains instructive. For observers, the Meghan Markle fashion saga stands as a case study in power, branding, and the fragility of celebrity influence when tested against institutional rigidity. So, it is a cautionary tale. In industries built upon legacy, doors open without noise, but when they close, the echo lingers. Like, comment, and subscribe for full coverage of this ongoing high fashion controversy.